Today, June 7th, is World Food Safety Day. World Food Safety Day is a creature of the World Health Organization. And this year in Jamaica, we want to share with you some of the kinds of concerns and solutions we have been using as we too, like the rest of the world, make plans to ensure that our food supply is safe for human consumption. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Food Safety Day Workshop 2021. My name is Carol Rose Brown, and I work for the Tourism Enhancement Fund as the Director of the Jamaica Center of Tourism Innovation. The theme for Food Safety Day 2021 is Safe Food Today for a Healthy Tomorrow. Food Safety Day, by the way, is a vehicle of the World Health Organization. And as all of us know, the World Health Organization is in all of our crosshairs. It is in the process of helping us understand our current situation with the coronavirus, and food safety is, of course, a critical part of that conversation. As the director of the JCTI, we work closely with tourism stakeholders to facilitate the certification of workers in our sector. And we are particularly interested in workers in culinary because we are interested in ensuring the safety of food and that it is not only safe but presented well. To that end, we have brought together a panel for you today of the number of players in the sector, from the business of the production all the way to the presentation of the food. And we hope that you are going to stay with us and listen to these interesting conversations and come away with more understanding, a better understanding of how you should manage your own food safety. So, without further ado, let us begin. Today, we want to begin our conversation with one of the agencies in Jamaica central to that conversation, the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We want to begin with Mr. Colin Cooper. He is a food safety and protection specialist at the Ministry of Health. He's responsible for implementing policies and programs that deal with nutritional food safety. He also manages audits and ensures that proper and appropriate standards are maintained in all areas. Mr. Cooper is also central to the development of national food safety policies and providing technical advice in food safety management. Mr. Cooper, we are delighted to have you and we look forward to your comments. Please.
Much, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. Thanks again for providing this medium from which we can share some points, reinforce some situations through which we can improve, and the intersectoral collaboration that is critical towards the stated objective of ensuring good, safe food for the Jamaican population. Now, I might also add that since I'm here, that the National Codex Committee is the local entity that is charged with looking at activities for World Food Safety Day come June 7th. I currently chair that committee, so we have a week of activities that have been going on, and we will culminate with the celebration on the 7th. So you will hear and also get some information as to some of the links and some of the things that will also enhance this particular perspective. However, my particular presentation today will be focused on our tourist establishment, as we would call them, and the food safety requirements. I'm going to look at it from the perspective of what are some of the measures that ought to be put in place so at least we can satisfy some of that regulatory requirements. Historically, in 1996, a study found that approximately 1 in 4 visitors to Jamaica were affected with what was called traveler's diarrhea during their stay. And in that year, the Ministry of Health didn't have the wellness at the time, but Ministry of Health initiated a program to cauterize that problem. And the aim was to reduce that rate from 25 to 12% over a 5-year period, looking at improvement in environmental health and food safety standards. At the end of 2002, the travelers' diarrhea incidence rates were 72% lower than it was in 1996 when the program was initiated. And that was an hotel survey. It was structured along the line that the results came about based on the fact that training and technical assistance to these facilities assisted in improving the compliance. Some of the interventions that were done at that time, and I see somebody from, a representative from Round Hill, which would have been one of those long-standing facilities. The strategies there included the promulgation of some legislations, such as the Tourist Establishment Regulation. We developed a stronger working relationship with all the critical stakeholders, including but not only limited to TPDCO, which we still have that relationship. And also that the capacity of some of the parishes, regions were strengthened to ensure that we have what was like a rapid response team to deal with outbreaks, because that was of particular importance to some of the properties. Just to indicate that the Ministry of Health is one of those decentralized ministries. So you have head office, you have 4 regional health authorities, and you have the 13 parishes. And the parishes does the operational work. Regions of that all those activities drive the process. Food in Jamaica is clearly defined, not in how other jurisdictions might have it, but it includes water, ice, or any substance manufactured, prepared, sold, or presented for use as food or drink, or flavoring, or condiment used in the preparation of or with the preparation of food. So it's an all-inclusive package that we normally use. As I said, the regional health authorities and the parish health department recognize the value of the tourist industry and put in place measures to ensure that we would have that kind of relationship. However, there are some challenges that do occur. And with the fact that from time to time we have an expansion in this area, I'm looking at some of the challenges that we would have encountered over the years and trying to see how best we can use that to control some of the food safety challenges that will occur. So we talk about the commissioning process. That is where we end up with quite a lot of challenge, where you have to have all the players in, all the critical stakeholders to ensure that the property is open successfully and you would have a smooth operation. What are some of the objectives here? Looking at the documentation, design, and the intent of the project, including all of those architectural characteristics. looking at the functional and operational health requirements, verification of the design to ensure that you have comfort for your occupants and the operation and management personnel, looking at cost minimization and the training. And let me just pause. The training component is of paramount importance in order that people can understand what are the regulatory requirements. So the commissioning process in a nutshell starts with the project identification stage, and it ends when the facility is fully occupied or is in use and has proven to operate satisfactorily under all public health requirements. Those requirements would have met and the approval would have been given, and you'd get the official certification. Some of the challenges that we would have encountered, because people aren't aware, because some of these stakeholders might not take time to get themselves au fait with some of the situation. They have a short time to implement some of the requirements. Sometimes there's insufficient knowledge or limited knowledge, or they might rely on information that they might get from one agency and assume that that is the standard and transfer it to say that is what the local standard, the local requirement is going to be. We end up with some challenges there. So what we seek to address from this kind of process is that the technical requirements would be there, the legal requirements would have been understood, and the functional and operational needs of the occupants, users, and the owner-operator, including health and safety, security, comfort, and cost-effectiveness of operations and maintenance would have been known. It's a coordinated effort that is required. So you have other agencies there, and we mentioned them, Municipal Corporation, NEPA, TPDCO. But on the health side, you have the regions, you have the parish, you have the hotel nurse, you have your medical officers of health, you have your engineer, and you also have your food safety specialist that can provide you with some of the information that you need. Some of the risks associated with the inadequate commissioning of the properties, meaning that you did not get all the things together. Litigation. We might have to take enforcement action. Sometimes the facility has to be closed. You end up with outbreaks of diseases. You also have exposure to certain environmental hazards. You have accidents. And you end up with challenges to your business. I call it loss of business. Very, very simple. So when we do the proper commissioning, this planned program of activities advance the property's attainment of health specification from the earliest phase. So we walk you through from that infancy point all along until you are ready to open. And then we shouldn't have any problem. What are some of the factors that have been challenging us? Simply put, things like non-application for license and permits. And this is an annual event. All staff that is at the facility who is working there ought to have their food handler's permit. The facility is supposed to be licensed. We have not, in some instances, received the design layout for the facility to look at how we can reduce the risk for food contamination. Simple things like hand wash stations are not sited properly, and they might not be adequate or appropriately placed. Sometimes, based on certain architectural designs, you might end up with certain decorative blocks, tiles, which do not facilitate easy cleaning. And these also allow for the entry of pests and other such vermin into the facility, which can affect your ability to provide safe food. Absorbent tile in the food areas. Challenges occur. Waste pipes located over the food areas. Sanitary conveniences or bathrooms located directly above food areas. Poor plumbing designs leading to frequent nuisances, blockage problems. Ventilation problems due to design and improper orientation of the facility, leading to the growth of some microorganisms such as molds. Reuse of building problem, not properly adapted to the current operations. Waste storage not properly designed or located. Sewage plant or system with inappropriate design not properly suited, and therefore you end up with nuisances. Still have challenges for flooding, and you end up with areas where you have mosquito breeding, which is a nuisance. Pool or swimming pools not compliant. Sometimes you have new technology that has been introduced and create challenge for the approval process. So, what is critical? Health certification. So you need to have an awareness. We always ask that the industry get themselves acquainted with the law, the regulation. It is there. Public Health Tourist Establishment Regulation 2000. And in it, there are certain critical components. Certification is Regulation 4. Outbreaks of communicable diseases, what are the requirements, is at Regulation number 30. Regulation 29 speaks to what are some of the things that the facilities, owners, occupiers need to provide. Weekly surveillance reports. Regulation 47 speaks to self-inspection checklists that you have to do in order to provide to the health department so it can provide a understanding of what is taking place. We can identify where some challenges are, and then we can seek to provide you with the technical advice. So an application is critical, followed by an inspection. You might have a pre-inspection, current inspection, and then you have the questionnaire, and then you might end up with a post-inspection. It's a continuation process. Outbreaks, establish endemic levels for each property, and from that, we'll use that as the benchmark to determine what are some of the challenges. When you exceed that, what are the trigger factors? What do? So that's incumbent reports we get from the hotel surveillance report, and that information is compiled and analyzed from time to time. The weekly surveillance report and hotel self-inspection checklist, some is weekly, some are monthly, but based on that, we'll sit and we'll discuss and we'll see how the situation works. Let me point out here that we always encourage that the hotels, tourist establishment have a committee that can sit and work with the health department from time to time. Properties, I am sure, can attest to the fact that this kind of relationship works, and it works well when it is in existence. It works well when it is in existence, so at least you can identify or detect, you can prevent, and we can put in place the necessary control measures. And that is of paramount importance. Remember, public health is about prevention. We put in place measures to prevent certain things from occurring. foodborne disease outbreak, foodborne incidents has significant costs. Let us remember that this is not 1996 when we were using a different medium to communicate. Now, everybody is a photographer. Everybody is a journalist, and everybody has the capacity to transfer information in a short space of time to a wide audience. And a lot of that information, it cannot be retrieved in the same order in which it is disseminated. So I'm just saying, ladies and gentlemen, what I've just done is a synopsis of how we look at things to prevent certain things from occurring. Once we have the mechanisms in place, once we're aware, we can work with you, we can work with the industry, we can educate, we can inform, we can position the process so at least we understand what it is that we need to do in order to satisfy the minimum public health requirements that is needed to operate, and we can continue, or you can continue to operate in a seamless process, and we work together as part of this overall community with the overall objective to ensure safe, sound, wholesome food at all times. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper. Found that very interesting. What I liked most particularly about Mr. Cooper's presentation is that he focuses on the need for having properly trained and certified people responsible for these activities. And that is a very comforting thing, I think, in a time when all of us are learning the difference between clean, disinfect, and sanitize. These are really important things to be aware of, especially in our industry, in the business we are in, that is so densely, so dependent on a good feedback, good reports from visitors. I wonder if any other panelists has a question for Mr. Cooper. Okay, so let us move on to the next speaker. We welcome Mrs. Hilary Rochester Macintosh. She is the first, possibly the only, food safety manager that has ever been at Round Hill. And I don't know if anybody knows what Round Hill is. Round Hill is one of the institutions that defines hospitality in our region. And this is really, I believe, an important takeaway from all of us, that Round Hill is now in the business of hiring and keeping on its team a food safety manager. Mrs. Macintosh has been at Round Hill for a while. She has been in the food safety business for a while. She has spent a fair amount of time in training and has, over a period of time, been promoted from one position into the next, so that she is now well versed and ready to take up her responsibilities as being responsible for food safety at one of the Caribbean's most prestigious hospitality institutions. So let us welcome Mrs. Macintosh, please.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Rose Brown. It's a pleasure to share with you all today what Round Hill has been doing in food safety. We've had a formal food safety program in place for the last 9-10 years. And yes, I was the first and still am the only food safety manager having been employed at Round Hill. I agree with Mr. Cooper, what he just said about training. Training is very important. And when our food safety program was first implemented, training was the first thing on our agenda. We rolled out with ServSafe food safety manager training, and ServSafe is a recognized international food safety training body. When we started out formalizing our program, and I will speak today about the food safety program at Round Hill. When we started out, we had all our managers trained from procurement through cost control, dining room, bars, restaurants, kitchen. All our supervisors and managers were trained and certified. So we have quite a number of ServSafe food protection managers certified here. And over the years, I went a little further, and I am now a certified ServSafe instructor and a registered ServSafe examination proctor. Okay. Round Hill is audited 4 times a year by a company out of the United States called Hospitality Now. We're audited by food safety, for food safety, that is. And Mr. Cooper, your team is here with us very often too. We work very closely with your team, and they have been, you know, really helpful to us over the years as well. I would like to share with the rest of the panel some slides from my screen, you know, of things that we do here at Round Hill when it comes to food safety, from procurement straight to the plate, as we would say. Our food is kept safe. When foods come in at our receival areas, all cold foods are temped by our store clerk in our receival area. So no food will come into Round Hill that has not been inspected and temped before it comes in. And we have a guideline for that. So we have guidelines as to temperatures that our foods are, our potentially hazardous foods are received at. There are guidelines also as to what they're stored at. Now, when food comes in and they're transported to the kitchen from our main distribution centers, they're also temped again to ensure that the quality has not been compromised during transportation. Once our foods are prepped, everything is labeled, and I wish I could share further with you, but there's our screen. We have a wonderful little machine called a Prepantem Station, and it's pre-programmed with all items in our operation, all food items in our operation and on our menus. And all an associate has to do is just go in, find the food item under the category, just tap the screen, and it prints a label that comes with the associate's name, the date and time it was prepped, and the use by date and time. And it also has the use by day. So each day when an associate goes into the refrigeration, they will see right away if something is nearing expiry, or if it's time to take it out and get rid of it, or to use it before it gets to expiry. So labeling is something that we are very strong on. Also, temperature taking is done electronically as well. All our foods are temped with a little machine that we call a temp taker. It's a thermometer, but it records all food temperatures in real time. And it produces electronic logs. So at any time you can pull up our logs and it will tell you what temperature something was cooked at, what temperature it was stored at, what temperature it was before cooking, after cooking, and all of that information. We also practice the FIFO method, a first in, first out method of using our products. And everything is dated and labeled, as I said. In our stores, we use a date gun, and the minute something comes in, it is dated right away with the receival dates. Our refrigeration system, we have a system called Temp Stick in our refrigerators, and this system reads the refrigeration temperatures every 2 hours, and a report is sent to my phone, our managing director's phone, the chef's phone, and our maintenance manager's phone. Every 2 hours, we can literally see what the temperatures are in all our walk-in units. Once a unit temperature goes out of range, an alert is also sent to our phones every hour until the problem is resolved. So once we get an alert, we call into the different areas to find out what's going on. It could be that maybe they're cleaning the fridge and has left it open for a while, which would trigger the temperature being out of range. Another system we have in place is our clean as you go buckets. And we have clean as you go banners all over the place to remind associates that they must clean as they go. So every station, every workstation has a series of clean as you go buckets, a green bucket for washing, a blue bucket for rinsing, and a red bucket for sanitizing. So every station, as soon as the associate finishes using, that station and their utensils, everything is cleaned. And we are very strict with our clean as you go policy. Our sanitizing buckets, as soon as the water begins to look a little murky, it is changed. Every 2 hours, or as soon as it starts getting murky, it is changed. And on all our clean as you go stations, we have a sanitizer test station where there are strips that they use to test the level of sanitizer in the waters, if it is up to par or if it is getting weak, so it can be changed. Hair restraints are required in all our food and beverage areas. Our hand wash stations, I heard Mr. Cooper earlier on spoke about, the need of hand wash stations. We have hand wash stations located throughout our areas, all within close proximity of all work areas. And they're fully equipped with single-use paper towels, sanitizer dispenser, soap dispenser, hot and cold water, hands-free step-on trash bins, and all our hand sanitizing stations, along with signages, for the correct hand washing procedures. In our establishment, we have a no bare hand contact with ready-to-eat food. Associates are allowed at no time to use bare hand contact with ready-to-eat foods. So every station is equipped with a glove station. So anywhere you turn, there are gloves to be used and to be changed. As soon as they're used, they're changed, hands are washed before a new pair of gloves are put on. On our stations, also on our hot ranges, we have a facility where we have our utensils for handling ready-to-eat food are kept in hot water to sanitize, hot water that is above 82 degrees Celsius. And this is kept, it's an electric unit that was designed for this purpose. So in between uses of these utensils, they're kept in this heat sanitization until being used again. We have signage all over our kitchens or storerooms or bars to remind people, of what they're supposed to do. We have color-coded signs for our cutting boards. All our cutting boards are used for their specific color coding. Green for vegetables, fruits and vegetables. We have yellow for poultry, blue for fish and seafood, white for dairy products and pastry products. We have brown for cooked foods and red for red meats. And all our stations also have our cutting board stations. Our cutting boards are held in racks by color code. So an associate needs a cutting board. Even if they don't remember what color they're supposed to use, the chart is right there so that they choose the correct color. And this is one of the ways that, we eliminate cross-contamination by using color-coded cutting boards. All our vegetables, when they come in, we have a vegetable wash station. Fruit and vegetables are washed in an antimicrobial fruit and vegetable treatment, and they're dried in a spinner before being prepped. And this is a system that was set up for us by Ecolab. Also, in addition to our electronic logging with our temp taker machines, we also have manual loggings. All our different sections are guided by cleaning schedules. So when an associate comes in and they look at the cleaning schedule, they know what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and what materials that are used to do it. And this is in all our sections, and associates, have to sign off whenever a section is clean, and they have to sign off what they do, how they did it, and the different areas that they did. All our refrigeration, as in addition to the temp stick system that records temperatures in our walk-ins, our standalone refrigerators and standalone freezers are checked 3 times a day, and temperatures are recorded, and we have logs that, you know, that these are manually recorded each day. At the beginning of each shift, we have what are called daily huddles, where we will have a few minutes of food safety training. And, you know, so everyone is kept up to date and refreshed on their food safety practices. So we do this in our daily huddles on a daily basis. And just little refreshers, as we call them. In our operation, we only use hands-free garbage cans. So to dispose of garbage in all food areas, you just drop it in. It drops into a, I wish I could show you on my screen, but we're having problems sharing the screen. The garbage goes in and it closes back up. So they're hands-free and covered. Also, our garbage cans are color-coded. We have the plain garbage cans for regular garbage, green coding for compostable items, red coding for meat scraps, blue coding for recyclable plastic containers, and yellow for broken glass. So you know where to put what type of garbage. Now our garbage house is fully non-porous. Our walls and our floors are non-porous in the garbage house. The garbage house is air conditioned, and this is where all the garbage goes during the day and at the end of the day, and it is picked up every morning from our garbage house. All our garbage are kept covered in the garbage house. Or we're washing for dishes and cups, plates, and so on. We wash mechanically with an industrial dish machine. We have 2 of those, and we have 2 glass washing machines as well. And this ensures that, you know, all our wares are washed and sanitized at correct temperatures. Our manual ware washing area, where pots and pans and all of that are done, have specific guidelines as to the temperature of the water for washing, rinsing, and sanitizing. And as I said before, we have signage in all these areas just to remind somebody if they forget temporarily what these temperatures should be, or what it is that they are supposed to do. And I think this is it from me.
Thank you, Mrs. Macintosh, Vex of Sanitation. At the various stages of from the delivery of the food to the consumption of the food, Mrs. Macintosh has given us a very thorough review of these steps, and one understands why Roundhill can charge this kind of money for their rooms. They make sure that what they are doing is properly done.
At Round Hill, we are very passionate about food safety.
No, absolutely.
I have, over the years, I have created what is called a food safety culture.
It is abundantly clear that at Round Hill, this is a serious issue, and we are delighted that in a lot of ways you are leading the way possibly in this area. We know inside of the Ministry of Tourism, my job in the Tourism Enhancement Fund is certification for workers in the sector, and one of the areas in which we are working is this whole business of sanitation. I noticed that you are ServSafe certified. We have just finished training ServSafe managers to be tutors and proctors. You will meet Chef Aston Price later, who also has those credentials, because we too want our sector to be very clear about how to manage the business of sanitation. Thank you, Mrs. Macintosh. Our next guest is Dr. Aisha Jones. She's the founder and principal consultant for a company called MLR Technology and Innovation. And her specific focus is product and service development and capacity building in the life sciences, health and wellness. Dr. Jones' work focuses on biotechnology and agro-processing, and she is responsible for the development and introduction of a number of products in this area. She's also an academic, a lecturer at the University of the West Indies. We like academics, and especially academics who understand how the business of the business world works. We are delighted to have you, Dr. Jones. Thank you for being with us this evening. Please proceed.
Thank you very much for the invitation and for the introduction. I will be presenting very briefly on what I would call the supply end. Our last two presenters spoke from the demand end. So the hotels, the hospitality service providers. And the truth of the matter is that all food chains have a base that starts in agriculture. And I'll be presenting just some 10 key considerations or things to think about if you are a farmer currently serving the tourism industry, or you are a farmer interested in serving the tourism industry, and what this means for your food safety practices. I have, in my earlier days studying as a PhD student, I studied the inland fisheries in Black River, which of course was a key input of meat for the tourism industry in the South. And even though I wasn't studying food safety, I was studying sustainability issues of the artisanal fisheries. It really was amazing to see oftentimes the absence of any real food safety measures that was going into the industry. More recently, I've worked very closely with the health and wellness tourism subsector in providing innovative products made from Jamaican agricultural inputs. And one of the biggest challenges that I've faced in the past 4 or 5 years in trying to develop and to introduce these products into the system is really oftentimes connected to food safety, the supply of safe and high quality materials that will be used in these different products. And as I go through the presentation, I will make reference to some of these best practices as we move forward. But as I mentioned before, Miss Rochester and Mr. Colin from the Ministry of Health spoke more on this end of the food supply chain, on the hospitality sector and the role of food safety practices and programs in ensuring that the consumer is getting the best quality food. But the truth of the matter is is that if the producers, the processors, and the distributors themselves have significant challenges in building their own capacity for food safety and implementing those practices, and the entire tourism food supply chain will be affected. And we've seen this. The panelists from the Ministry of Health actually spoke to this, that, you know, in the 70s and the 80s, that there were serious challenges that oftentimes is actually linked to the production of food. So I want us to think about some of these key areas that has to be considered if you are a producer or if you're processing raw materials from agriculture, whether minimal processing or whether you're actually manufacturing products that will enter the tourism sector. And the reason why this is very important is that for the average tourist that consumes food in Jamaica, if you think about it, they have very little control over what they actually consume. It is not like us, as you know, as Jamaicans, we go into the store, we select things based on our own confidence in the brand or in the supply of the material for the food. In the case of a tourist, that decision making is really left up to our entire food supply chain. So it is even greater, it's even a greater liability for us to, and responsibility for us to think about the importance of food safety along the entire supply chain, along the entire value chain. So here are some 10 questions that I think is important to ask if you're supplying the food chain, the food supply chain in the tourism space, or if you're interested in doing so. Hazard analysis, and this is a terminology that's adopted from HACCP, which is being able to identify where all the possible points of contamination could be on your site. So if you have, let's say, a lettuce farm, your points of contamination on a lettuce farm are going to be very, very different from if you have a fish pond. So it is very, very important from the operational perspective to be able to plot where the actual hazards are, to be able to plot where the actual sources of contaminants are. And then you have to be able to identify specifically if these hazards are chemical in nature and how, if they're biological in nature and how, and if they're physical in nature. So one of the big issues that have been emerging within the tourism space, especially with the establishment of Alex, which is really an IT platform that links agricultural suppliers to the hotel industry, is really the appearance of physical contamination. So the things come in with lots of stones, lots of dirt, additional plant material just showing up at hotels. And this really is a clear indication that food safety considerations are really not being adhered to, or the capacity is simply not there. So identifying exactly where these points of contamination could be, and at what point do you accept this level of contamination? At what point do you acknowledge that, okay, it's over that critical point, is also important? And then what are the steps that you take thereafter to mitigate or to reduce or to augment the potential hazards that could emerge? Sanitation. So I think this is a fairly kind of straightforward and well understood, but oftentimes on a farm, particularly if you are a smaller producer, if you're an artisanal producer, this idea of being clean and sanitary may not be too much of a focus. And the truth is, it has to be. And we don't only look at the produce that has to be clean and that has to go through, just depending on what it is, some kind of sanitation process, but the equipment that you're using, the cutlass that you're using, what is your system to ensuring that that is clean and that there isn't cross-contamination, you know, between different horticultural activities or between different supplies. The containers that you're using, if you're using boxes or pallets or wheelbarrows, you know, what are the systems, what are the practices that you have in place? Also, the areas that you use for packaging and handling and storage is also very critical. The cleaning supplies that you might use, you know, when you're on a farm, this is even more important, because you have to bear in mind also soil quality, right? So it's very important that any selection of cleaning supplies, yes, we'll be able to clean, you know, all the assets, but will also ensure that you are not creating some environmental hazards that can affect sustainability moving through. Third, worker hygiene. So as an example, I've been on farms that I know supply the tourism industry for my own consultancy work. And they're workers there, but there are no bathrooms, right? There are no facilities, right, for general hygiene. And the question always comes up, so where do they use the bathroom? There are no hand washing stations on the farm. Where do they wash their hands? And this is something that we tend to overlook until there is an outbreak. And then, because of the absence of traceability systems, it's hard to even tell exactly what was the source of inputs. Very, very, very critical to ensure that any person that's running a processing facility, that's running a manufacturing facility, even though generally speaking, your manufacturing facility, regardless of how small, will oftentimes have you know, proper resting facilities, but your farms should always have facilities for workers to use. In the pandemic, I think a lot of concerns around workers who are sick and their interaction with our food has been heightened, right? And the truth is, it's a very serious consideration. Now, because of our general COVID protocols, workers who are sick with COVID typically don't show up to work, and it should apply. It should apply to a farm. It should apply to a processing facility. But beyond that, there needs to be some kind of system. If there are certain types of symptoms that you're producing, you really should not be directly handling food. Because the truth of the matter, they say every contact leaves a trace, the Locard principle. It's a very well-known principle in forensic science. Every contact leaves a trace. So if a sick worker is handling your food, it's going to leave a trace. Whether that trace will result in disease is probably another discussion, but the point of managing risk and managing hazards is to reduce the number of contacts where there could be potential contamination. Number 4, water. So as we know, water is a very, very, very important part of any sustainable food supply chain. And I've seen in one particular instance, there were a series of teas that we were working on. Teas that largely supplied the herbal teas that we supplied the tourism industry with. And we have a very structured process of testing our products. So we develop products, and then we put them through the different quality and safety checks before they got on the market. And for some reason, we just could not pass heavy metals testing. We had no idea why. We just couldn't pass. You know, we would get, you know, additional supplies from the same supplier. It was generally in an area that we don't expect high levels of heavy metals in the soil, and it would go through the process, but we just continue to fail. So we had to do an assessment, and we thought that there were several potential points of contamination. So for example, they were washing the plant material with water that was collected from like a metal roof. When we assessed the roof was totally filled with rust, totally. There's no screening, there's nothing. So certainly we know that there's a certain amount of metal contamination that was coming from the water alone. Later on, we also had a processor that processed for us, and we found that the heating trays also had very high levels of heavy metals, and the mill, okay? And the truth is that we as product development scientists, as formulation scientists, we bring our products through this kind of rigor. If a farmer is simply just providing you with herbs to make tea, you are not going to go through that kind of rigor. Generally speaking, you may not. And this is why it is very, very important to enhance the knowledge and enhance the capacity of suppliers within the system. Because the truth is that if you do not go through the best practices or the required tests for all the inputs of your agriculture or of your produce, it is likely that when it ends up on the table in the hotel, it has high levels of bacteria, it has high levels of pesticides, it has high levels of fertilizers, if it is not going through the test, unless you are sufficiently convinced that you're through the procurement process, that the suppliers that you're engaging have systems in place to protect the end consumer of their goods. Harvesting, similarly. So how are the produce handled? Are they getting in contact with materials or equipment that you know are not toxic? So just as I mentioned before, if a butcher is milling beef for you, are you confident that they're using appliances that don't have that the surfaces are not toxic? Do you know this? Is that important to you from the demand side? Is that important for you to know and to assess before deciding on this particular supplier? Are there equipment? Is their equipment regularly cleaned, regularly maintained? The containers that they're using to store, are they packed right beside the containers that they're using to store chemicals? Do you know this? And is that important for you to know on the demand side and to insist on? And if you are currently supplying, is this what you have currently in your facility? Are the packaging containers sound? So when you lift up a crocus bag, you're not going to have it, the bottom fall out and everything ends up back on the ground, and then you just pack it back up into another bag and it gets sent off. These are very serious considerations at the base of the food chain. Post-harvest loss or spoilage of food is a major, we're in the tropics, and the truth is that we have a very fertile environment. So you're going to have post-harvest loss, and it is important that that waste stream, along with others that will come out of the system, are properly and efficiently managed. Because the truth is that waste is a major input of contamination within the system: biological contamination, chemical contamination, and physical contamination. So adhering to proper post-harvest technologies or practices is a very, very important part in pushing for food safety along the value chain. Storage and transportation, and this speaks a lot to what Ms. Rochester mentioned earlier, that as soon as products come in, that they're able to now put their checks in place to ensure that these have been properly stored and properly transported to the facility. So ensuring that the products are of the right temperature depending on the food at the point of delivery is a very, very critical management practice that has been explained earlier, and it is very important right across the board. The vehicles that the suppliers are using, are they clean? Are they checked? Are the produce again stored separately? If somebody comes with a truck filled with vegetables and in it they also have, they stopped at the farm shop and they picked up some fertilizer and some pesticides. That's a problem. That's a problem, because every contact leaves a trace. And ensuring that there is a constant check-in, as mentioned before, cleaning as you go is very important, even on the supply track side. I'm glad we have Chef Aston here. In the systems, can you tell exactly where if it came down to it, can you track exactly where every bit of food that you prepare, might not be you specifically, but every bit of food that you prepare, where exactly did it come from? And if there is an outbreak that is traced to a particular product or produce that has come in from a supplier, do you have systems in train to monitor that? And does your system of your system of traceability include things like accreditation and compliance? So are you keeping a track of the accreditation that your suppliers have gone through and the compliance? As was mentioned by the Ministry of Health, for example, that has a lot of the regulatory systems in place, as well as the Ministry of Agriculture that also has its own regulations in place for suppliers. Are you monitoring that they're all up to speed?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yeah, it's something that we have to do because at the end of the day, not saying that we want to play the blame game, but somebody must take the responsibility. Must be responsible for whatever outbreak.
Excellent.
Is. So, we have sometimes our chefs or even our same food purchasing officers, we send them to the different suppliers to ensure that the procedures, the SOPs are up to standard, and we also require from them certificates, up-to-date certificates, to ensure that at the end of the day we are on the safe side.
Excellent, excellent. So thanks for that, and that's very important. That relationship between your purchasing departments and the suppliers is very, very critical, and I'll speak a little bit more to that at the very end. Emergency planning. So let us say there is an outbreak, and you might be able to trace it back to a particular input. Does the farmer have the tools and the systems in place to actually detect if there is continuous food contamination at the source? Does the producer have the tools in place to link with the Ministry of Health, for example, and any processors in between for that epidemiological surveying? And how important is having these tools, of the producer having these tools, a determinant as procurement departments within the hospitality sector. And then control measures, how can we ensure that any outbreaks can be managed or mitigated moving forward? So these systems, oftentimes, which can be complex, especially for small farmers getting into the system, are very critical nonetheless. And then general management, having systems in place is very, very, very critical to a successful food safety program, no matter where you are along the value chain. And the fact that Roundhill, for example, what differentiates Roundhill, let's say, from another hospitality player is not that their overall knowledge of food safety is different, but it's that they actually have systems that are in place to monitor that. And the same needs to be had for your producers. They need to, number one, as mentioned before, there are general best practices, regulations, and standards that are in place. But the truth is, in supplying the tourism market, you also have to be aware of what the standards are of your buyer, right? So whatever those requirements are of a hotel or of a restaurant or of a food event for the producers, those have to be brought to forward, and there has to be systems in place to ensure that the producer is adhering to those requirements to ensure that the relationship is a sustainable one. The basic legal obligations of any organization, any entity, you have to have a structured business. You have to, as mentioned before, the buck has to stop with some entity. So having all those legal structures in place is also going to be very critical. Training critical, no matter how small an entity, no matter how small or artisanal a farmer or a producer, they can be trained to a very high standard. The tools are in place to do that. I just think the linkages and the feedback mechanisms need to be better well established. Record keeping and information management. If you interact with farmers at all, they're not good at least not that they're not good. They don't record things in the way that we might, right? Those of us who are not in the system. So what we really need to do is to find that middle ground. How can they record and trace and track their supplies in some kind of reproducible fashion that will ensure that that anything that they supply into the market is safe. Regulatory compliance and standards is a major one. The truth is that nothing that we're discussing now is new. There might be some unique tweaks here and there, but the truth is that the regulatory framework has been beaten, right? It has been fully established, and they are there. So understanding what regulations apply to you as producers is very, very important if you're going to be a sustainable partner within the tourism sector. If you can use information technology, that's great. I mean, with the Internet of Things and the opportunities that those provide in helping to manage farms or manage producers and production is also helpful. And there are, of course, good agricultural practices. There's a manual from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. I think it was done in 2006 that really, goes through some very helpful details in readying farmers, not only for the tourism industry, but generally speaking, for supply into the market. So I said there were 10 areas, but here is just number 11, because we recognize, and by we, I mean the Tourism Linkages Network, the Agricultural Technical Working Group, recognize that there's a challenge within the artisanal producers space to provide foods that are of high quality and that are safe to enter the tourism market. They have identified this. The stakeholders within the hospitality space have expressed this continuously, that there is a gap, that they get sometimes any and everything showing up at delivery, and that it is creating a serious disruption to the policy directives that agriculture needs to be better linked to tourism. So the technical working group has ventured on finding a way to pull on all the different sources of support, sources of information to help agricultural suppliers within the tourism industry to come up with a tourism agricultural supplier food safety manual. And this will essentially deconstruct, similarly in the way that I've just described, these 10 steps or these 10 considerations on how you can, whether you're a small producer or whether you're a large producer looking to scale, how you can use some of these best practices and apply them in your own internal operations, and to ensure that you're also compliant with the local regulations. So I'm taking this opportunity for those of you who are watching this on World Food Safety Day. If you are a producer interested in supplying the tourism sector, that now is an opportunity to contribute to the discussions around food safety. What help do you need? What support do you think is lacking? Do you have some best practices and solutions that you've implemented in your own facility or on your own site that you think the wider agricultural community could benefit from? And if you want to contribute to this discussion, you can reach me either directly through the Tourism Enhancement Fund, or you can email me directly at aishadjones@gmail.com. Thank you again for this opportunity, and happy World Food Safety Day.
Well, Dr. Bailey, that was a huge amount of material. Certainly, those of us who are focused on the plate in front of us, don't often think about all that goes on before the plate appears. But I believe that your comments this evening have reminded us that possibly we should all of us start over again and begin to think even more carefully about the food before it comes. I mean, you mentioned the coronavirus and how it has impacted us. One of the things we notice when we look at our television programs is the impact of the producers of food, the persons in the farms out in California, the people in the food processing plants, and we see that they are challenged about getting vaccinated. And of course, these people are concerned about the safety of their food. But thank you for this reminder. I think all of us could do well to be concerned about these things. And now we come to the last but not the least of our presenters this evening. I must, for the purposes of full disclosure, he's an old friend of mine. He is, well, I mean, he's not that old. It's just that I've known him too long. He's Chef Aston Price. Chef Aston Price is a pastry chef. He bakes the most marvelous breads. But what he also is an educator. He teaches culinary arts at Hart, the Hart University, the Hart Hospitality College. In our support for the industry, for food safety, we have recently embarked upon the training and certification of tutors to deliver food safety certification. This is a very important matter to us. Chef Aston Price is one of the 5 young chefs who are all of them certified chefs, either pastry chefs or savory, trained as food safety managers, who are also certified as tutors and proctors of these exams. And we're rolling out for the hotel sector these courses. In fact, for some courses, we're offering them free of cost to some players in the industry, because this is of so much importance to us. I want to welcome Chef Aston Price to our meeting this evening, and thank you, Chef Price, for being with us. Take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Roseborough. All right. You're hearing me okay, right?
We're hearing you. Fine.
So there's a phrase or there's a line that says, clean is not always the same as safe. So the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation, which is a partner of the National Restaurant Association of America, which is a branch of the Tourism Enhancement Fund, which is responsible for the training and certifying hospitality and tourism workers here in Jamaica. We offer a program that is called the Surf Save Food Handler. That is what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today. Right? The program, it consists of 5 modules. All right? Basic food safety, personal hygiene, cross-contamination, and allergen, which is a major problem in our food service industry right now, because sometimes when we prepare food, we are not so sure of what the allergens are. So this program teaches you about the different allergens out there. Time and temperature abuse, which is another important factor, and cleaning and sanitizing, which is in any food service establishment, is very important, right? The training or the course is self-paced, right? It's a self-paced study course, right? It is offered in 3 languages: English, French, Chinese, and Spanish. That's 4, sorry, well, English, well, 4 languages, right? English, French, Chinese, and Spanish, right? The training is available online, right? It is approximately about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. And as I said before, it's a self-paced study where you can go online, you log on, and you're able to resume or continue from wherever you stopped, that's the good thing about these self-paced study courses. You can stop, you can take like an hour, like 45 minutes out of your day, especially if you're working. do the course or do a module, go back to your regular working, working hours or regular working activities, and then you go back to the course, which is very good. And it's the type of course that is available to, and it's unique to persons who are working like myself, right? You have 60 days to complete this course after you've registered and started the process. So it is not an ongoing thing, right? You have 60 days to complete it. It is also fully accredited with the National Restaurant Association of America. And you have, once you want to become certified, once you've completed the course, you have that certificate for 3 years. And after that 3 years, you have to renew that certificate. And the reason for the renewal is to ensure that you're keeping up with these food safety practices. Because in the hospitality industry, things change, right? It's a dynamic industry and everything moves with the time. Right now, we are experiencing the corona pandemic, so we now have to change how we deal with things. We have to now change how we approach things, right? So the Surf Save Handler is one of those courses where it teaches you some of the things that you thought you knew. And it's an in-depth course, and it's a very informative course, because trust me, when I did both the handler and the manager, it taught me some things that, when you go out in industry, when you see persons, or even when on the regular, those cook shop persons, you see that you're neglecting them. These things are what, and if you're not aware of all of this information, you think that is the norm. So what we here at JCTI, Tourism Enhancement Fund, and the National Restaurant Association of America, we are rolling out these programs for persons to become certified. And Ms. Rose Brown can tell you that that's one of our main things here in Jamaica for us, to have certified, competent hospitality workers. Because without that, we can never move, or we will never move our industry that we have here that persons come for, because this is what tourists come for. They come here for that. And if we don't provide safe food for them, we're going to be in a serious problem, right? Food safety is very important to everyone, not just to you, but it is also safe to the public, right? It is important to your customers. It is important to your fellow co-workers, and it is important to your employers, because a clean and safe environment helps you to stay in business. And Mrs. I'm trying to remember her name, Mrs. Rochester. Did I get it correctly? Mrs. Rochester McLean or McNish, right? She, they also have some, safe food safety programs and courses as well. And I was sitting here listening to, her presentation, and I was saying, the program that she has there at Round Hill, just listening to it, it makes me want to go to Round Hill, and it makes me want to see what that system is like. Because, going around in the hotel industry, always hear about HACCP, and, most hotels don't really have the full HACCP system. What we have are bits and pieces of it. So to hear Miss Hillary speak so much of food safety, it brings me joy, because these are some of the things that we neglect. So the Surf Safe Handler is that course where it opens, as I said, your eyes to new information. And, as Mr. Collins said, we are now not in the 70s or the 80s. We are now in a modern time. We're in a modern world where education, where knowledge is at our fingertips. And the JCTI, Tourism Enhancement Fund, we have grasped that. We are holding on to that, and we are now putting it out there for persons to be a part of this whole grand design. And we want you all to start off with the Surf Safe Food Handler, because as I said, clean environment helps you to stay in business. It keeps you safe. It keeps you healthy. Right? And it helps us to grow as a nation. What do you?
Thank you, Chef Price. Thank you for JCTI. Thanks you for the promotion. We shall have to be sending you a check. But I see Mr. Colin Cooper has a hand up. Mr. Cooper, we're waiting to hear your question or comment, sir.
Oh, it's just that it pleases my mind to hear the discourse amongst the different players. I had two presentations. I had one in which I was going to look at the regulatory components, and I chose to look at it from the standpoint of the number of additional rooms that we will be getting into the market, and therefore looking at it from the standpoint that this is where most of our problems comes from. The fact that some people do not start with it. Roundhill, well, I'm not going to call out any particular company or entity, but the beacons are there. And you can see one of the principles of food safety is consistency, is training, and more training. I don't know Mrs. Macintosh. We might have met probably under other circumstances. But just listening to her, you understand that she knows the systems. That is critical. The other thing is, as Dr. Bailey is mentioning, the same standpoint, but what I'm going to ask us to do is to get a copy of the law. Mrs. Rochester, Mrs. Macintosh, you have a copy of the tourist establishment regulation. You need to download a copy because that is what is used. Mrs. Rochester was around when we did the TPD manual, that big fat manual on food safety. Right? Those days I was much younger. You understand? But we did all of those presentations and we knew it. I hear you talking about safe serve. I still have the manuals here. I have a box here so I can talk to Miss Rose Brown and see how we can do it, because this is where we have to get the thing going.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
these are.
what I'm trying to say here is that the players who are coming to the market, yes, we want the investment, but we need a smooth flow. We will work with you from conception onto the point where you're ready to roll out. If you wait until when you're going to roll out to get us onto your thing, you're going to be in problems. And when you call, you're going to call and get frustrated. Because if you call the top and the top call down, a lot of things won't be able to change. And you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to say, oh, this. All we're saying to you, prevention is better than cure. Work with us from day one. Let us guide you along. The simple things. Acceptance rejection criteria is what Mrs. Macintosh spoke about. You're getting vegetable. Where it coming from? Have you ever taken an opportunity to visit the farm? Have you ever gone there and said, the tomato that I want must meet this criteria? The lettuce must meet this criteria. The cabbage, the carrot, and then you go to the school and say, my workers must meet these criteria. So you come here, you work here, but you have to be a part of here. When I wake you up in the night, you must say Round Hill. When you're drinking a cup of tea, you must say Round Hill. Round Hill must be a part of you. You don't just come to Round Hill for 5 hours and then when you're done, is Square Hill. No, it's a culture. It has to be a part of you. And that's how the training has to be a part of it. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Did I notice Dr. Bailey's hand? No.
Prompting there.
This has been wonderful. I think that possibly the reason I'm thinking, Dr. Bailey, is that we are focused because of Mrs. Macintosh's very illuminating presentation on the hotel side of the business and Ashton's interesting presentation about the actual cooking, presentation of food, etc. And Mr. Cooper's work and the overarching business of how the ministry does this. I think that your area was possibly very much an important addition to this entire exercise, because again, this is about the production side. Long before the thing appears at the delivery point or gets its temperature taken, just to assess what is what. We also have to concern ourselves with the supply side of our business. And I hope everybody who will listen to this talk will come to an understanding of how important all of these things are, and that all of us need to recommit ourselves to efforts to ensure food safety, because food safety is important to us because tourism is our business and we want to ensure that that is top of mind. But food safety is also all of our business. All of us are having 2 or 3 meals a day. All of us are buying food for persons who are family members, people who are sick, children, older people, people who have special needs, etc. Food safety is all of our business. That HACCP document you spoke about, Mr. Cooper, possibly all of us should download a copy of it and begin to become intimate with the details. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We were delighted to have you. And we want to just remind you that in this year, the theme for World Food Safety Day is Safe Food Today for a Healthy Tomorrow. And that is indeed what all of us want.
This is the manual.
That's a fat manual, Mr. Cooper.
Yes, this is the manual. So I need to talk to you. We need to review it. It needs to be updated. This was from about 2004, 2005. Miss Rochester might have one. She should have one.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Right.
Again, thank you all for joining us this evening.
2004, that's outdated, Mr.
Yeah, that is all, that's too far. You know, there's things have changed over the years, you know. So I agree, you know, you need to go back to the drawing board and, you know.
I dare say otherwise. But the principles, remember, the principles are grounded.
But you know, Mr. Cooper, you know, we are far beyond the hour and a half that was suggested to us earlier.
That's the sensitivity of this situation.
Exactly, but I think also that whether or not 2014 was long ago or just recently, I think that we are in a different moment.
Yes,
I think the impact of the coronavirus on all of us. I think even the average citizen now can distinguish between what is clean, sanitized, and disinfected. And so maybe this is a time for us to recommit ourselves to a conversation about food safety, because clearly now it is going to resonate in a way that it would not have done 2 years ago, 5 years ago. So
Well,
we will follow you up, Mr. Cooper, and encourage you to do an update for our current period. And again, let me thank everyone for being with us this evening. This has been a lively and interesting conversation. Thank you all so much.
Right.
And we will do this again in 2022. Thank you.